State your name, rank, organization, present station.
Edward Worthington Hall, Jr., Captain, Detachment of Patients, Letterman Hospital.
Are you the accused in this court-martial?
Yes, sir.
Captain Hall, I would like you to go back, if you can, to the day of your capture, January 2nd, 1951. On that day, you and several hundred other prisoners began a long march, a march that brought you after several days to camp number 5 at Pyeongtaung. Will you tell us what you remember of that day?
Well, I remember it was cold.
Why did that impress you particularly?
Because I'd torn my trousers half off in some barbed wire the night before, and the wind was blowing through my underwear. It impressed me a lot. For a while, some of the guys kidded about it. But then they stopped kidding. They stopped talking, too.
Why was that?
Because they were beginning to die. A lot of the guys were in shock. Some had been wounded.
You had been wounded, too, had you not?
Yes, I'd been hit in the leg with a mortar fragment. We had to drag the bad ones on sledges. This one boy, a boy ahead of me, he had a big hole in his gut. They tried to tie him together, but the bandages kept coming loose, and, well, anyway, I could see that he was dead, but the men kept pulling anyway. I don't know why. And then the Chinese stopped the column, and they went up and down hollering that the pace was too slow and for us to speed it up. But you couldn't go faster pulling those sledges. You'd try, but you couldn't.
Did they find a solution?
Yes. They told us to bury all the men on the sledges.
You mean those who had died?
No, not just them. This one lieutenant, he started arguing that the boy his group was dragging wasn't dead yet. So they gave him a shovel, and they told him to dig 2 holes. One hole was for the boy on the sledge, and the other one was for him.
Did the lieutenant do what they told him?
Yes, they had a gun to his head. And after he finished, he looked at this guard, and he said, "Mister, where I come from, they call this a lynching." And he spit right in the guard's face and started singing, "Baby, it's cold outside."
Go on.
They shot him in the neck, and he flopped over.
It's true, isn't it, that when you saw this happen, you picked up a wounded officer and carried him for 4 days so that he wouldn't be shot? Now, Captain Hall, was your leg treated when you got to the camp?
No, they just threw us in huts and they left us there.
How was your general health at the time?
Well, not so good. We only had corn to eat, cracked corn.
When you spoke of your hut, exactly what did you mean?
The officer's hut. We had been separated from the enlisted men.
Did you have any communication with them?
Not officially, but word leaked through that conditions were pretty hopeless over there, and a lot of the young kids were dying. I knew they were getting the same rations as we were, and none of us were dying. So I wanted to get over there and find out what was happening.
How did you accomplish that?
I bribed a guard. I gave him my rations.
What did you find on your visit to the enlisted men's section?
Well, the place looked like a pigsty, and the stench was sickening. There was no sign of discipline, no chain of command, no one in authority. And it was true what we'd heard about the young ones dying. They just didn't seem to care. It was pathetic. They wouldn't eat or drink. They just folded up. And after a while, they laid down and died. I even went up to this one kid. I shook him. And I said, "You want to die?" And he said yes, to leave him alone. So I slapped him. I threatened him. I said I'd make him throw him in the hole.
Why was that?
I thought if he got mad enough, he'd get up.
Why did you want him to get up?
Because I had this crazy idea that if a man was standing up, he couldn't die.
In other words, you were trying to give him an incentive to live instead of merely indulging in a brutal attack, as the prosecution implies.
Yes, sir.
Now, Captain Hall, did you achieve your purpose by slapping the boy?
Well, some of the kids that I'd been talking to got up and started swinging at me.
The incident caused a fight.
It sure did. I didn't think they'd have the strength to do it, but they heaved me right out in the yard.
What happened after the slapping incident, Captain Hall?
Well, instead of letting me go back to my hut, the Chinese took me straight to headquarters. They spread the word around that I had been working for them, and they tried to fatten me up to make it look like I was getting special favors. They worked on me to give a propaganda lecture, and I agreed, because I knew it was the only way I could get back to the men. But I made them let me write the speech myself.
Why was that?
Well, I thought if I wrote it, I could make it sound phony, and I wanted the men to know that I didn't believe in any of that garbage.
Is that why you used phrases like, "It gives me most honorable happiness and joy"?
I thought I could make it sound sarcastic.
So by your testimony, the slapping of the sick boy and the giving of the propaganda lecture were in keeping with your sense of military duty. Then despite the nature of those deeds, your motives were of the highest. Now, Captain Hall, we understand that after giving the lecture, you disappeared until about 6 months later. When you came back, apparently changed. At that time, you went among the men soliciting signatures for a surrender leaflet. You threatened them with punishment, and many of them thought that you had become an informer. Were you aware that by doing that, you were violating military law?
Are you defending me?
What were your motives then, Captain Hall? Were they still of the highest then?
The highest?
What were your motives? Were you still trying to do your military duty?
No.
But your motives had changed, hadn't they? And you had changed. You didn't do what you did willingly.
No.
Nor willfully.
No.
Nor knowingly.
No.
Had you changed, Captain Hall? Or had they changed you? Had they not, in fact, broken you during those 6 months? Broken you to the point where you had no will of your own? What did they do to you, Captain Hall?
They made me stay alone.
Solitary confinement. Where?
A little room, a cellar.
What was it like, that room?
It was dark. The water seeped in and made the floor wet, except in one place that was higher. That's the place where I slept. They used to bring me rags and a bucket every morning so I could mop up. That was the only time I was allowed to move.
Were you allowed to do anything else?
No, I just had to sit there in the dark. I had to keep my back straight.
How long did they keep you like that?
I don't know. I only know that after a while, I started doing math problems in my head and singing songs that I could remember from school, just so I'd have something to think about. But they made me stop that. They said I was making too much noise.
What happened then?
They brought me some paper and a candle and said that I should write instead, but only about myself.
Did they also question you during this period?
Yes, they used to come in the middle of the night when I was trying to sleep.
What did they want?
They kept asking me to sign surrender leaflets.
Did you sign?
Not for a long time.
What happened during that long time?
They kept me in the cellar. Then one night they came to get me. I had to walk through the snow, and I was freezing. I didn't know what was happening to me. And I had to stand in a puddle. And they said that I had to sign the leaflets right then, or they'd leave me alone for the rest of my life.
Did you sign?
No.
Were you punished?
Yes, they threw me back in the cellar. They stopped bringing me stuff to mop up the water with. The whole place just got to be mush at the bottom. You just had to lie there in your own dirt. Some of my teeth had gone rotten, so I dug them out with my fingers. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. It was like being buried alive. They used to come to the door, and they'd ask me how I liked being alone. And I used to bite my hand to keep from answering them. I don't know how long I was there. And then, I guess it was at night, this voice said that there was a letter for me. And at first I didn't believe him, because nobody wrote to me, or I didn't get the letters. They said it was because...
Because what?
Because nobody cared for me.
What was in that letter?
It was very short. It was from my father. He asked me why I hadn't written to him lately.
Was that all?
No. He said... It said my brother Pete had been killed. And Then at that minute, I knew I couldn't hold out anymore. I kept having these thoughts, and a voice said something about a blanket and a dry place to sleep. They said if I didn't sign the leaflets right then, that I'd be alone for the rest of my life. So I said, okay. I said, yes. Tell me what I have to do. I'll do it. I'll say it. Anything. Germ warfare, surrender leaflets, dope peddling, anything. Only I've got to get some sleep, and I can't be alone anymore. So they pulled me out, and they gave me a pen, and I signed everything.
In other words, you collapsed.
Yes.
Among the things you signed on the night of your collapse was a note informing on the escape plans of Captain Miller. Is that not a fact?
Yes.
Is it not also a fact that you had been in isolation for 6 months and could not possibly have known of the escape plans of Captain Miller?
Yes.
Now, Captain Hall, you said that when you were in that cellar, they gave you writing materials and a candle and told you to write about yourself. Was that in the nature of an autobiography?
Yes.
How did it go, that autobiography? Can you remember?
When I was a lad, I served a term as an office boy in an attorney's firm. I washed the windows and I swept the floor. I polished up the handle of the big front. I tried to make a monkey out of them, but I couldn't. They always knew.
And they kept you writing autobiographies all those months you were in solitary.
Yes, about 20 of them. They'd compare them. And if I left one thing out or thought of one new thing, they'd say I was lying. And they'd make me write another one.
What was the purpose behind all this, do you know?
Yes, they were trying to find out about me.
Trying to find out something they could use against you, huh? Some special thing they could break you with. And finally, you gave it to them, didn't you? Finally, you gave them the key they were looking for. I have here Defense Exhibit A, which has been marked for identification and accepted in evidence. Captain Hall, is this not a true copy of your autobiography? The one you wrote that night they threw you back in the cellar?
Where did you get that?
Is it not also true that before they forced the truth out of you with this document and then crowned it with a letter about your brother's death, you had been able to resist? I have marked here a passage which I would like you to read. I'd like you to read it aloud for the court to hear.
No, I can't.
Page 17, here. Read it, please.
No, I won't.
Is this document material to the testimony?
Yes, it is.
The witness is instructed to read.
When I was a kid, I remember our home as a...
We can't hear you. Your hand is covering your mouth.
as a place where you had to whisper and be careful when you shut the door. Because my mother was sick so much. It was a lonesome time for Peter and me, and we kept waiting for my mother to get well so she could be with us. But then she died. After that, there was just nothing. I was 12 years old when that happened. My father was away in the Army most of the time. He left us a bulletin board with reminders on it, and the housekeeper gave us a star every day if we were good, and my father looked at them when he came home. He taught us a lot of things soldiers should know. How to keep our room neat, how to take orders, and that soldiers don't complain. But as long as I remember... As long as I remember, my father never kissed me. He didn't hold us.
He didn't hold us or do what we saw other fathers doing with their kids. I never felt warm. I'm as strict with myself as he was. I can't seem to love anybody now. I loved my mother, but she's gone. I loved my brother, but he's not here. I wish my father had given me a chance to show how much I loved him. If this loneliness can kill me, I hope it does now.